Usually, like when we talk about a medical diagnosis, there's this underlying expectation of precision.
Right, yeah. Like it's an exact science.
Exactly. It feels like engineering almost.
Oh.
Like you break your arm, they do an X-ray, and it shows that jagged white line right on the screen.
Right there in black and white.
Yeah. And the doctor just points a pen at it and says, there it is. That's the problem.
It's totally binary. Like the bone is either intact or it's fractured. There's no real debate.
Right. It's clean. And honestly, more importantly, it's comforting.
Oh, absolutely.
Because we desperately like things to be visible, right? We want things to be easily categorized. But then, and this is what we're getting into today, you step into the world of human relationships.
Right, which is completely different.
Yeah, you look at interpersonal trust and psychological boundaries, and suddenly that X-ray machine is completely useless.
It is. It's the absolute definition of diagnostic muddy waters.
Muddy waters, I like that.
Well, because unlike a physical bone, you can't simply take an X-ray of someone's internal intentions. Right.
You can't just put a stranger through an MRI and see if they're going to be a supportive friend or if they're just an emotional parasite.
I mean, I wish we could, but it's exactly, you can't X-ray intentions. Yet, if you look at modern life, we live in a society that constantly screams at us to be completely vulnerable.
Right. All the time.
But then simultaneously, it warns us that the world is just full of people ready to exploit us. So today, for you listening, we are figuring out how to survive that paradox.
And it is a paradox that every single person listening to this deep dive has experienced. Probably within, like, the last 24 hours, honestly.
Without a doubt.
You're constantly being asked to unlock the front door to your house to prove to the world that you are friendly, that you're authentic.
Right.
While at the exact same time, you're being told that the neighborhood is just full of thieves.
Okay, let's unpack this because it's so incredibly stressful. We are constantly hit with these two entirely contradictory rules for a living. Rule number one, right, is self-disclose to build trust.
We hear it everywhere. Everywhere.
Yeah.
Be authentic. Share your story. Post your morning routine, your struggles, your therapy breakthroughs, your raw, unfiltered life on social media.
Yeah, the whole live your truth culture.
Exactly. We are told that extreme self-disclosure is the absolute only way to build real, meaningful intimacy. But then rule number two comes in just as loudly, which is don't show your hand.
Right. Guard your peace.
Guard your peace. Don't give energy vampires the ammunition to exploit you. It's exhausting.
It really is. And that contradiction is exactly why our mission for this deep dive is to look way beyond basic social etiquette.
Yeah, we're not just talking about being polite.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
We are going to explore the actual psychological frameworks and the strategic conversational tools you need to actually do both of these things.
Which you really do need both, right?
You do. You have to be able to build genuine, profound trust with the right people while, and this is key, fiercely protecting your inner psychological boundaries from the wrong ones. Because the choices you make about what you say and what you deliberately keep hidden, they trigger really profound biological and psychological responses.
Let's start with why this is so exhausting today specifically. Because the sources we're looking at point out that this tension, this tug of war between opening up and staying silent, is infinitely worse now than it was, say, a few generations ago.
Oh, absolutely.
And it basically all comes down to the complete collapse of psychological distance.
Yeah. Historically speaking, relationships developed very, very slowly over long periods of time and within incredibly tight-knit physical communities.
Right. You lived in the same village your whole life.
Exactly. You had natural buffers, you knew the baker, you knew your neighbors, and the pacing of how you got to know them was regulated by physical proximity and just standard social norms.
It was built in.
Right. But today, that entire structure has completely evaporated. Because of the fluidity of modern relationships, which is obviously primarily driven by digital communication, you might be interacting with a total stranger on the internet, a coworker on a global Slack channel, and a lifelong friend, all in literally the same 5-minute window.
It's wild when you think about it like that. The natural buffers are just gone.
Completely gone. And because those boundaries of distance are gone, the stakes for oversharing or undersharing are suddenly incredibly high.
Yeah, you have to make these instantaneous decisions.
Right. You are forced to decide your level of vulnerability with people you have absolutely no established context with.
Which brings us to this fascinating concept from the text. They call it the aesthetics of disclosure.
Yes, this is really interesting.
I loved this part. Let's look at the strategy of withholding information, the whole not showing your hand approach. Because in a lot of self-help circles, withholding is framed as a negative thing, right?
Right. It's often seen as being defensive or emotionally unavailable or just cold.
Exactly. But the sources argue that withholding actually creates what they call a surprise value or a mystique.
And what's fascinating here is the underlying psychological drive behind that mystique. It goes all the way back to our evolutionary wiring.
Like survival instincts.
Exactly. Human beings are fundamentally just naturally curious creatures. We are biologically drawn to what we don't fully understand because, historically, understanding our environment was a literal matter of survival.
So figuring things out keeps you alive.
Right. So when you withhold certain information about yourself in a conversation, you aren't just putting up a defensive wall. You are actively stimulating the other person's cognitive desire to explore.
You're like creating a puzzle for their brain to solve.
Precisely. When someone has a certain level of mystery, when they do not immediately dump their entire life story, their every anxiety and their deepest fears onto you within the first 10 minutes of meeting, it acts as a magnetic pull. The gaps in information actually compel the other person to lean in. They want to learn more. They want to fill in the blanks.
You know, I was thinking about this when I was reading through our notes for today, and I came up with an analogy. It is exactly like the psychology behind a movie trailer.
Oh, that's a great way to look at it.
Think about the absolute worst, most frustrating movie trailers you've ever seen. What do? They show the entire plot from the opening scene to the climax.
Oh, yeah. They give away the inciting incident, the romantic twist, the villain's defeat, literally everything.
Right. And if you show the entire plot, which, is the equivalent of extreme self-disclosure in a conversation, people might still watch the trailer. In fact, if the trailer is shocking enough, they might stare at it like a car crash.
Yes, the sources actually have a specific term for that. Uncanny attraction.
Uncanny attraction.
Right. If someone abruptly displays extreme weakness or overshares in a way that aggressively deviates from normal social pacing, it becomes incredibly creepy.
Creepy, yeah. But you can't look away from the trailer. It's intensely captivating in a morbid, almost uncomfortable way.
Exactly. It's the uncanny attraction.
But here's the crucial part. You definitely aren't going to buy a ticket to the movie on opening night.
Right. Why would you?
Exactly. You've already seen the whole thing. There is no mystery left to justify the investment of your time or money. But if that trailer hides just enough, if it gives you the tone, the atmosphere, but obscures the actual plot twists, you are absolutely desperate to see the film.
That is a perfect encapsulation of the dynamic. Disclosure is not just a simple transactional calculation where I hand you one personal fact and you hand me one back.
It's not just data exchange.
No, it is a highly complex, nuanced dance of fascination and caution. We are repulsed, yet oddly fascinated, by people who break the unwritten rules of conversational pacing.
Like the trauma dump.
Exactly. When someone trauma dumps on you while you're just waiting for the elevator, you are captivated by the sheer audacity of the social violation, but your internal alarm bells are absolutely deafening.
But let me pause and push back on this a little bit. Because if we are sitting here saying to you listening, hey, intentionally hide things so people find you magnetic and mysterious and attractive, isn't that just playing manipulative mind games?
That's a very fair question.
Like, isn't intentionally constructing a mystique the exact opposite of being a genuine, authentic human being?
That is a very common concern, and honestly, it's a completely valid one if you look at it purely as a tactic, like pickup artist stuff.
Right, exactly.
But if we connect this to the broader architecture of human psychology, it is not a manipulative game at all. It is a fundamental biological drive to maintain equilibrium in our relationships.
Equilibrium.
Yes, you aren't withholding information to manipulate the other person. You are pacing your disclosure to match the actual verified level of trust that has been earned in the relationship.
Okay. So it's about respecting the natural rhythm, not manufacturing some fake, mysterious persona.
Exactly. When you share too much too soon, you aren't being authentic. You are actually overwhelming the other person's nervous system.
Wow, okay.
You're demanding a level of intimacy that the relationship's foundation just cannot support yet.
Which brings us to the actual structural science of how trust is built. It's called the social penetration theory.
Yes. Developed by psychologists Artman and Taylor back in 1973.
Right.
I love the imagery they use for this. They proposed that human personality and the development of relationships is structured exactly like peeling an onion.
The social onion. It remains a classic theory in psychology because it visualizes a totally invisible process so clearly.
Right, because human interaction is structured in these concentric layers. You have the outer superficial layers, like the thin, papery skin of the onion that you show to absolutely everyone.
Right.
And as you move inward, layer by layer, the information becomes increasingly private, vulnerable, and really central to the core self.
And the text points out that this peeling process moves in two specific directions: breadth and depth.
Breadth and depth.
Yes, breadth is the sheer range of topics you are willing to discuss. So with a coworker, your breadth might include movies, sports, the weather, maybe local restaurants.
Pretty wide range of safe topics.
Exactly. But your depth, how intensely personal and vulnerable those specific topics get, remains very shallow.
Okay, that makes perfect sense.
Okay.
So you might have immense breadth with an acquaintance, but zero depth. You can talk about 50 different subjects,
Sure.
but none of them touch your actual core fears.
Precisely. And the engine that drives us to peel deeper into the onion to actually increase that depth is a mechanism psychologists call the reciprocity of self-disclosure.
This is where we get into the hidden wiring of human connection.
It is. This is deeply tied to Goldner's norms of reciprocity, which is really a foundational concept in evolutionary sociology.
Okay.
It's the idea that human society, going back tens of thousands of years, is built on a deeply ingrained mutual exchange system. It is literally how we survived as a species.
So when someone shares a piece of private intel with you, when they peel back a layer of their onion, you subconsciously feel a physiological drive to maintain what the sources call the equilibrium of intimacy.
Exactly.
You literally feel compelled by your own biology to share something of equal weight in return.
And what's fascinating here is that this reciprocity happens entirely beneath our conscious awareness.
We don't even know we're doing it.
No, we
Okay.
do not sit there at a dinner party with a mental calculator tallying up intimacy points. We just feel it in our gut. When the equilibrium of the conversation is balanced, our nervous system actually downregulates. We feel safe.
But when it's unbalanced,
When the equilibrium is unbalanced, either because someone is sharing way too much or we are sharing too much and they are giving nothing back, we feel profound, often physical discomfort.
and the sources break this concept of reciprocity down into 5 distinct types. This was a massive light bulb moment for me because it shows how this same biological drive influences everything from buying a coffee to getting into a screaming match.
It really covers the whole spectrum. Let's really explore these because they're so relatable. Type 1 is the simplest. Favor reciprocity.
Right. Favor reciprocity is the bedrock of social living. It's giving a gift, doing someone a solid. In the modern digital context, the sources specifically highlight social media behavior.
Like liking someone's post or commenting on their photo.
Exactly. The psychological mechanism is straightforward. When you receive a kindness, your brain registers a social debt, and you naturally want to return it to balance the ledger.
But the text highlights a massive risk here. Because if you do favors, even something as small as liking a photo with the strict underlying expectation of a return, it completely warps the relationship.
It stops being about genuine connection.
Instantly.
Okay.
It turns into a transactional ledger. It becomes, I liked your last 3 posts, why haven't you liked mine?
Which is just exhausting because it weaponizes a natural bonding instinct into a form of passive-aggressive accounting. Passive-aggressive accounting. That is so perfectly said. Okay, type 2 is concession reciprocity. And man, I see this absolutely everywhere, especially in business and sales.
Oh, it's huge in business.
The psychological principle is that when someone lowers their demands, you feel biologically obligated to meet them halfway.
Right. It's widely known in psychology as the door-in-the-face technique. It plays on our innate desire not to seem unreasonable.
I was trying to map this onto a relatable real-world scenario, and it's literally the classic workplace negotiation.
Give us an example.
Imagine you go to your boss, and you ask for an entire month off to go backpacking. You know it's a ridiculous ask.
Yeah.
Your boss looks at you like you're insane and says, absolutely not. We have a massive product launch. Are you crazy?
They slam the door in your face.
Exactly. And then you visibly sigh, your shoulders drop, you look totally defeated, and you say, okay, I understand. Well, could I just have this coming Friday off to rest?
And the boss almost always says yes.
Right, because they just rejected your massive request. Their brain registers that they just slammed the door in your face, which creates a social imbalance.
A debt.
Exactly. When you concede and ask for something tiny, they feel a deep, almost irresistible psychological obligation to concede as well and just give you the Friday.
It is highly effective. But as the text explicitly warns, the profound risk of concession reciprocity is that it is a tool for psychological manipulation.
Yeah, you have to be careful with it.
Right. If someone in your life, a partner, a friend, a coworker, is constantly making outrageous, unreasonable demands just to force you into conceding to their actual smaller demand, they are not collaborating with you. They are actively weaponizing your natural desire for social balance against you.
It's incredibly sneaky.
Hmm.
All right, type 3 is really the core of what we are talking about today. Self-disclosure, reciprocity, you share a weakness, I share a weakness. We peel the onion together.
Right. This is the mechanism that keeps the intimacy equilibrium steady as relationships actually deepen. But the inherent risk here is unilateral sharing.
Oh, the dreaded unilateral share.
It's painful if I sit down and share my deepest, darkest fear with you, a genuine, deep secret about my childhood, and you respond by, like, taking a sip of water and talking about the turkey sandwich you had for lunch.
Ouch.
The cognitive dissonance is massive. My brain has extended a bridge of vulnerability, and you have entirely refused to meet me on it. The physical sensation of that rejection is acute.
Which perfectly explains why the opposite is also true, and why I feel so trapped sometimes. Think about that coffee shop scenario again. You're just standing in line, minding your own business, and a complete stranger behind you just starts trauma dumping about their incredibly messy, toxic divorce.
They're unilaterally sharing a deep vulnerability with you, a complete acquaintance.
Exactly. And you don't feel closer to them. You don't think, wow, what a beautiful, vulnerable soul. You feel like a hostage.
Because the equilibrium is shattered.
Yes. Your brain is screaming because the reciprocity equilibrium has been violently shattered. You cannot possibly match their disclosure, so you just, like, nod and stare at the pastry case, sweating.
You feel held hostage because they have triggered the fourth type of reciprocity, albeit indirectly. Let's look at hostility reciprocity.
Hostility reciprocity. This is the dark side of the coin.
It is the innate evolutionary drive to retaliate when you are attacked, or when someone tries to assert unwarranted dominance over you. If a primate in a troop hits another primate, the immediate biological instinct is to strike back with equal or greater force to reestablish the hierarchy.
You punch me, I punch you harder. The risk is just a never-ending spiral of conflict.
Exactly. It requires immense, conscious cognitive effort from the prefrontal cortex to override that biological impulse to retaliate when you feel socially or verbally attacked.
Wow, okay. And finally, type 5 is normative reciprocity. This one feels most uniquely human to me. It's the obligatory stuff you do purely to avoid looking cold or antisocial.
Right. The sources use the example of returning what they call digital footprints, feeling obligated to view the Instagram story of someone who viewed yours.
I do that all the time.
Or, in a physical sense, feeling forced to help a coworker move apartments on your only day off, simply because they bought you a coffee 3 years ago.
It's the invisible web of social glue that keeps society functioning politely. But man, I can feel like a suffocating burden sometimes. It's that sinking feeling of, I have to do this not because I genuinely want to connect, but because society dictates that if I don't, I am a bad person.
Right. So when we look at all 5 of these mechanisms, the overarching theme is balance.
Always coming back to equilibrium.
Always. If oversharing or violating these unwritten rules completely breaks the psychological equilibrium of a room, the central question becomes, how do we measure it? How do we know exactly how much to share?
Yes. If trust is an onion, how do we know how many layers to peel off based on the room we are in? The text introduces some genuinely brilliant quantitative metrics for measuring this.
Psychologists have spent decades trying to map this out.
Yeah.
And one of the foundational models the sources highlight is the Johari window.
Developed in the 1950s by psychologists Joseph Luft and Harry Ingham. The Johari window. It sounds like a sci-fi portal.
It is essentially a portal into self-awareness. Imagine a literal window divided into 4 panes of glass.
Okay. Picture a window with 4 panes.
One pane is the open area. These are the traits, facts, and feelings that are known to you and clearly known to the people around you. Another pane is the hidden area, the things you know about yourself but actively keep secret from others.
Right, the stuff you hide.
The ultimate goal of healthy psychological self-disclosure is to carefully, incrementally move information from the hidden area into the open area. Doing this systematically reduces interpersonal friction because it eliminates misunderstandings.
But the text is very clear. You cannot just smash the glass and open the window for everyone all at once. You have to calculate the room. And this is where the sources introduce a mathematical concept called the group size rule for optimal disclosure.
This is a great rule.
When I read this, my jaw dropped because it explains so many ruined dinner parties.
Oh, absolutely. The math is incredibly precise, and it aligns flawlessly with the limits of human attention spans and the dynamics of group psychology.
Okay, so the rule states that your optimal level of self-disclosure drops dramatically as the size of the group grows. Let's break the math down.
Yeah.
In a one-on-one conversation, just you and me, a diet, the optimal amount of conversational real estate you should occupy is roughly 50%. You share half the time, I share half the time. Perfect equilibrium.
Right, balanced. But the moment you add just one more person to that dynamic, so it becomes a group of 3, your optimal disclosure drops to 33%.
And if it's a group of 4, it drops to 25%.
This is not just about being polite. It is about understanding that attention is a finite resource in any social gathering.
Right. Think about a dinner party with 4 people. If you are sitting there telling stories and talking about your life for 50% of the evening, you probably think you're killing it.
You think you're the star of the show.
Yeah, you think you are being incredibly engaging, the life of the party, bringing all the energy. But mathematically, you are hoarding the conversational real estate. You are dominating the room, throwing off the mathematical balance, and almost certainly annoying the other 3 people because their brains are biologically wired to want their 25% share of the reciprocity.
Exactly. If we connect this to the bigger picture, continuously violating the group size rule is the fastest possible track to being perceived as self-absorbed or severely socially unaware.
Oh, totally.
People will leave that dinner party feeling drained by you, even if your stories were objectively interesting, because you denied them their biological need to participate in the reciprocity.
So regulating the amount of time you speak is half the battle. But what about the depth? If you only have 25% of the floor, what should you actually be saying? The text gives us an incredibly clear framework for this. The 5 levels of disclosure.
Right. This framework takes the abstract concept of the social onion and makes it highly actionable. Psychologists categorize human disclosure into 5 escalating levels of risk.
Let's visualize this happening at a networking event or a party. You walk up to someone new. You start at level 1.
Level 1 is purely facts. Your hometown, your current job title, the weather, just surface level biographical updates.
Like, hi, I'm from Chicago. I work in marketing.
Exactly. The psychological risk here is practically zero. It is perfectly safe. It is the conversational lubricant you use for first meetings and basic business small talk. You are showing the outermost skin of the onion.
Okay, so then maybe you grab a drink, the conversation flows a bit, and you naturally peel down to level 2, preferences.
Preferences are your tastes, your favorite foods, your hobbies, what kind of music you listen to, how you prefer to spend your weekends.
Oh, you like jazz. I love that club downtown.
Right. The risk at level 2 is still very low, but the social utility is incredibly high. This is the hunting ground for commonalities. By sharing preferences, you activate the conversation and build casual camaraderie without exposing any real emotional vulnerability.
Okay, so the party is going well. You've established facts. You share some hobbies. Now the conversation shifts, and we hit level 3, opinions and beliefs.
Now we are crossing a threshold into much riskier territory. Level 3 includes your work ethic, your political leanings, your leadership philosophies, your fundamental priorities in life.
This is where you might say, I actually think remote work is destroying team culture, or I believe climbing the corporate ladder is a waste of a life.
And the text notes that this is considered a medium risk level because this is precisely where disagreements and social friction occur.
Right, because they might disagree.
You might discover you have fundamentally incompatible views on life. You use level 3 during the intermediate stages of relationship building, or when debating with trusted colleagues. You are showing the architecture of your core self, which means you are actively risking rejection of your ideas.
So preferences are safe and opinions are risky. Where does the real danger start? It has to be level 4.
Level 4 is feelings. This is the realm of your current anxieties, your past regrets, your deep stress about your job, your insecurities.
I'm terrified that I'm failing as a parent, or I cry in my car after work.
This is high risk. You are exposing actual, raw vulnerability. If you share level 4 information with the wrong person, it can absolutely be weaponized against you.
Wow, okay.
This level of disclosure should really only be accessed after a solid, verified foundation of trust has been built through the previous 3 levels. Level 4 is designed for mutual empathy, not casual conversation.
Which brings us to the absolute core, level 5.
Level 5 is secrets. These are the things you actively conceal from the world. Your intention to quit your job and steal clients, major hidden traumas, illegal acts, deep financial ruin.
The ultimate hidden pain of the Johari window.
Extremely high risk. The text warns of severe exploitation, blackmail, or catastrophic leakage risks if this is shared improperly. Level 5 is strictly reserved for deeply intimate, lifelong relationships or legally confidential settings like therapy.
And the most vital takeaway from the sources regarding these levels is the profound danger of level skipping.
Oh, skipping levels is a massive psychological red flag.
It's the coffee shop trauma dump. If you jump straight from level 1, hi, nice weather we're having, to level 4, I am consumed by the regret of my failed marriage, you don't build intimacy. You instantly, permanently destroy trust.
Absolutely.
The sources point out that people subconsciously view that kind of drastic level skipping not as genuine bravery or vulnerability, but as intentional impression management. They view it as a manipulation tactic.
Because it completely violates the reciprocity equilibrium. It traps the listener. It forces them to either artificially match an extreme level of vulnerability that they are nowhere near ready for, or it forces them to physically and emotionally recoil to protect themselves.
And let me pose a genuine question to you, because I have experienced this, and I'm sure our listeners have too. What if you're talking to someone, maybe you meet someone at a conference or you sit next to a stranger on a long flight, and the conversation just naturally, magically skips the small talk?
Right, it happens.
You just click. The chemistry is there, and suddenly, within an hour, you are deep into level 3 opinions and level 4 feelings. Are we supposed to artificially, awkwardly pump the brakes and say, whoa, sorry, hold on, we haven't spent our mandatory 30 minutes on level 2 hobbies yet?
That is a fantastic, highly nuanced question. If the reciprocity is truly balanced, meaning they're naturally matching your depth without any pressure and the exchange feels mutually enriching, then the connection is likely authentic. Sometimes humans just click.
Yeah, you just feel it.
However, the psychological text would strongly caution you to internally pump the brakes before crossing that final line into level 5.
Keep the ultimate secrets locked up no matter how good the flight conversation is.
Exactly, because even in a magical, deep, late-night conversation with a brand new person, the reality is that you do not know their character yet.
That's true.
You do not know how they handle conflict or how they treat people when they are angry. Pumping the brakes isn't about being awkward. It is a necessary act of self-preservation. And your ability to regulate yourself, to not get entirely swept away in the intoxicating dopamine rush of a new connection, requires a very specific internal psychological architecture.
Which brings us to one of the most critical concepts in the entire deep dive, the fortress of the self. Understanding boundaries. Because if you don't have boundaries, all these mathematical rules and levels of disclosure just collapse into a messy puddle.
Boundaries are the absolute core of your psychological defense system. The text specifically references contact boundaries, which is a concept originating from Gestalt therapy back in the 1940s and 50s.
Gestalt therapy.
Right. Gestalt psychology emphasizes that the human experience is about how we organize our perceptions. A contact boundary is the literal psychological demarcation line where I end and you begin. It separates my feelings, my thoughts, my responsibilities from yours.
And the sources outline 4 specific types of boundaries. Let's really dig into what these look like in everyday life, because I think a lot of people listening are going to recognize where their own fortresses have some cracks.
Let's do it.
The first is physical boundaries.
Physical boundaries dictate your literal corporeal space. Who is allowed to touch you, how close someone can stand to you in a conversation, whether you are comfortable with hugs or prefer handshakes. It's the most visceral translation of a boundary. If someone stands 6 inches from your face while talking and you physically lean back, your physical boundary has been breached.
Yeah, that uncomfortable step back. The second is emotional boundaries. And this one is incredibly complex. It's about not letting other people's feelings seamlessly dictate your own state of mind.
Which is profoundly difficult for highly empathetic people. An emotional boundary is what prevents pathological over-identification. It stops you from absorbing someone else's anger, panic, or sadness as if it were your own.
Okay, I struggle with this one.
A lot of people do. If a coworker comes into the office in a raging panic about a deadline, a healthy emotional boundary allows you to help them without your own heart rate spiking to match theirs.
Wow, yeah. The third is temporal or time boundaries. Man, this one hits close to home in the modern era. It's the ability to protect your time and not just indiscriminately give it away to every single person who asks.
Yes, preventing the piecemeal sale of your life. If you constantly check emails at 11 p.m., or if you work through your weekends simply because a client sent a non-urgent text, your temporal boundaries have completely collapsed. You no longer own your own time. The demands of others own it.
And the fourth is financial boundaries. Protecting yourself from unjust economic exploitation. This could be, constantly paying for everyone's dinner because you want to be liked, or lending money to a family member that you know you can't afford to lose, just to avoid conflict.
So those are the four domains where boundaries exist. But what is truly critical for our social survival is the state that those boundaries are in. The text identifies three primary states a boundary can exist in, and this state determines the health of absolutely every relationship in your life.
Let's explore these states. The first state is weak or thin boundaries. This is when the demarcation line between you and the other person is basically drawn in sand and the tide is coming in.
People with thin boundaries are hyper-adaptable chameleons. They simply cannot say the word no. They continuously prioritize everyone else's needs, demands, and crises above their own because they fundamentally confuse other people's problems with their own responsibilities.
And the sources make a really heartbreaking point here. Having thin boundaries usually isn't just a genetic personality quirk. It is almost always a survival mechanism learned in childhood.
Absolutely. It stems from early environments where the child learned a very dangerous lesson. If I say no, I will be abandoned, or if I assert my own needs, I will be punished or unloved. The child learns that safety comes from shrinking themselves and managing the emotions of the adults around them.
But when you carry that into adulthood, it creates extreme vulnerability. People with thin boundaries become the prime glowing targets for codependency, exploitation, and manipulation because they literally cannot keep people out of their level 4 feelings and level 5 secrets. They just let everyone in.
The opposite extreme of that trauma response is the second state, rigid boundaries. If a thin boundary is a line in the sand, a rigid boundary is a 50-foot concrete wall topped with barbed wire.
A person with rigid boundaries trusts absolutely no one. They refuse almost any self-disclosure, often refusing to even share level 2 preferences or level 3 opinions.
Because they are completely terrified of being hurt, judged, or controlled, so they preemptively shut the entire world out.
Wow.
The tragic result of a rigid boundary is complete, impenetrable isolation. Yes, they are safe from exploitation, no one can hurt them, but they are also entirely starved of the human connection they biologically need to survive.
Which brings us to the gold standard, the elusive third state, healthy boundaries. A healthy boundary is rooted in mutual respect. You respect yourself enough to protect your core, and you respect the other person enough to engage authentically. You can engage in selective disclosure, and most importantly, you are completely capable of saying no without being consumed by guilt.
I want to highlight a key metaphor here that therapists often use. A healthy boundary should never be a concrete wall. A healthy boundary is a sturdy, well-built door with a deadbolt.
Oh, I like that.
You possess the key, you have the agency to open it wide to welcome in a trusted long-term friend, and you have the power to slam it shut and lock it against a stranger or an intruder. It is an active mechanism under your conscious control.
I was thinking about it like a concept from high school biology. A semi-permeable membrane.
A cell membrane,
Right. A healthy psychological boundary acts just like a cell membrane. It allows the good nutrients to pass through, the trust, the vulnerability, the mutual support, the joy, but it completely blocks out the toxic bacteria and the viruses.
That is a highly precise way to visualize it. If your membrane is too thin, the toxins rush in and destroy the cell from the inside out. If your membrane is totally impermeable and rigid, the cell starves to death in the dark from a lack of social nutrients.
I really want to speak directly to you listening right now. Think about your own life this past month. If you are the person who always ends up staying 3 hours late at the office because you simply couldn't bear the awkwardness of saying no to a coworker asking for just a little help on this spreadsheet, your temporal boundary might be dangerously thin.
Right?
If you feel physically sick and drained after grabbing coffee with a specific friend because you absorbed every ounce of their anxiety, your emotional boundary needs immediate reinforcing.
Recognizing where your boundaries are thin is not an exercise in self-judgment. It is an act of gathering intelligence for your own defense.
It's vital.
Because the harsh reality of the world is that there are people out there who are actively, subconsciously looking for thin boundaries. When someone with malicious intent realizes your door is unlocked and swinging open in the breeze, they do not politely stand on the porch and knock. They step right over the threshold.
And that takes us to the dark side of this entire deep dive. Because having a permeable membrane assumes everyone outside is healthy. What happens if someone realizes you're empathetic, sees that your door is open, and decides to use that against you? We need to talk about the mounters and the sinister anatomy of intrusive communication.
This is where the psychological defense aspect of our discussion becomes absolutely critical. The sources define mounting as the act of attempting to assert dominance or superiority over someone else.
Okay, mounting.
This is often done using direct verbal jabs, or even nonverbal atmospheric cues like eye-rolling, sighing, or physically looming, to exploit the other person's vulnerabilities and establish a hierarchy.
They are literally trying to climb on top of you socially to prove to themselves and everyone else in the room that they are higher up the ladder.
Yeah.
But here is the single most surprising thing I read in all of the source material. It completely shattered my assumptions.
What was it?
Mounters do not target people who are incompetent.
Mm-hmm.
They don't target people with low ability. They specifically hunt for people with weak boundaries, the highly empathetic, nice people who will not fight back.
If we look at the evolutionary and psychological drivers behind this, it reveals a profound and pathetic pathology. A mounter doesn't attack you because they genuinely look down on you or think they are better than you.
Right.
They attack you because your kindness itself triggers intense jealousy and an overwhelming sense of psychological threat within their own mind.
Wait, I really need to pause on this.
Yeah.
Because this flipped my entire perspective on workplace bullies and toxic friends. So when someone is constantly bragging in my face, dropping names, or prying into my personal life with passive-aggressive questions, it's not because they are overflowing with alpha dog confidence. The sources are saying they're actually terrified of my kindness. That is a wild defense mechanism.
It is entirely rooted in their own deep-seated inadequacy. Your kindness, your openness, your ability to regulate your emotions without needing to dominate a room, that represents a level of emotional maturity that they do not possess.
Wow.
Seeing your piece creates a massive cognitive dissonance for them. To neutralize the threat that your maturity poses to their fragile ego, they have to tear you down. They have to mount you to reassure themselves of their own worth.
And because your boundaries are thin, you're the easy target.
Exactly. You are too polite, too socially conditioned to tell them to back off, so you become the perfect, safe target for their pathology.
They know you won't trigger the hostility reciprocity we talked about earlier. They know you won't punch back. And the way they execute this mounting isn't always overt bullying or screaming. The sources talk extensively about intrusive prying.
Yes, intrusive prying.
Asking highly specific, invasive questions wrapped in the guise of friendly conversation. Questions about your exact income, your education pedigree, your family background, why you aren't married yet.
That is not just bad manners. It is not someone being socially awkward. The psychological text is very clear on this. Intrusive prying is a hostile act of intelligence gathering.
Intelligence gathering. Sounds like corporate espionage.
Socially, it operates on the exact same principles. They are actively probing the perimeter of your defenses to extract level 4 and level 5 information. And they do this for two distinct reasons.
Okay, what are they?
First, they desperately need that data as comparison material to firmly establish their superiority. If they pry and find out you make $10,000 less than them, or your degree is from a less prestigious university, their brain registers a win, and their anxiety is temporarily soothed.
Gross.
Second, and far more maliciously, they use this private information as leverage, or, as the text chillingly translates it, a hostage for future domination.
They literally take your secrets hostage.
Exactly. If you carelessly self-disclose to a mounter because you mistakenly think, oh, they're asking about my life, I should follow the rule of opening up to build trust, you are walking into a trap.
Oh, man.
You are literally handing them the exact weapon they will use to subjugate you in the future. You are giving an emotional terrorist a blueprint of your vulnerabilities.
Okay, this is terrifying, but it is also incredibly validating to hear. Because we've all felt that weird, slimy feeling when someone asks a question that is technically polite, but feels like an attack. So the crucial question, once you recognize that a mounter has locked onto you, once you realize they are trying to gather hostages from your personal life by asking these invasive questions, how do you stop them? Especially if you have a tendency to be a nice person who hates starting fights and breaking the social equilibrium.
This brings us to what might be the most practical, powerful, and actionable tool in the entire text. It is a masterclass in tactical conversational defense.
Yes, the concrete abstraction strategy.
Yeah.
This is exactly what we promised at the start of the deep dive. We're going to teach you how to protect your inner boundaries, lock your door without looking like you are building a hostile wall.
The sources outline a brilliant step-by-step defense process specifically engineered to neutralize intrusive prying without escalating the situation into an overt conflict. And they use a very common, highly intrusive question as the case study. What is your income?
The ultimate rude question. Or, how much did you pay for your house? If someone asks you that and you just cross your arms and say, that is absolutely none of your business, you have technically protected your level 5 secret.
Right.
But you have completely shattered the social equilibrium.
Right, you've started a fight.
You've triggered that hostility reciprocity. And the worst part is, the mounter now has an excuse to play the victim and call you defensive or rude or overly sensitive.
Precisely.
Yeah.
They win the social interaction by making you look volatile. You want to completely deny them the information without giving them the satisfaction of an emotional reaction. So step one of the defense is the technique of concrete abstraction.
Concrete abstraction. Okay, so when they lean in and say, wow, nice watch, what's your actual income? The sources suggest looking at them calmly and saying something like, oh, about the price of a car.
Let's deeply analyze why this is psychologically genius. The mounter has asked a question, creating a cognitive loop that demands an answer. By saying, the price of a car, you provide a concrete image to satisfy their brain's immediate demand for a response.
Right.
You gave them a noun, a car, but the actual value of that noun is entirely, hopelessly abstract. Are we talking about a beat-up 20-year-old used sedan worth $2,000? Or are we talking about a brand-new custom Italian luxury sports car worth $300,000?
It's brilliant. You have given them an answer that means absolutely nothing. It completely protects your level 5 secret, your actual salary, while simultaneously feeding their intelligence-gathering operation a massive pile of dummy data. It satisfies their cognitive need for a response while completely starving their dominance objective. But mounters are nothing if not persistent. They're seeking a hit of superiority, and you just denied it to them. They will likely push back, which leads directly to step 2, passive control.
Right, so the mounter scoffs and says, well, what kind of car are we talking about? And the text says, you should respond with total neutrality. Whatever car you're imagining is fine.
This is a masterstroke of maintaining boundaries. By saying this, you are entirely shifting the burden of proof and the cognitive load of the conversation directly back onto their subjective imagination.
You put it back on them.
You are passively controlling the dialogue by flat out refusing to define the terms of the engagement. You aren't arguing. You aren't getting defensive. You're simply calmly refusing to play their game on their terms.
So let's say they are incredibly aggressive. They won't let it go. No, seriously, come on. A used Honda or a new Porsche. This is where we move to step 3, desensitization or conversational dodging.
At this point, you simply repeat the vague terms, maintaining a perfectly flat emotional affect. Just a standard car amount. You know how it is. You make the conversation feel incredibly unsatisfying and boring for them.
Right.
The text uses a great visual. It likens it to pushing against a heavy curtain. The mounter throws a verbal punch, trying to hit a solid wall to get a reaction, and instead their fist just gets absorbed by soft, heavy fabric. There's no impact, there's no traction. They expend their energy and you expend none.
And finally, step 4. Once you've provided enough of this dummy data and you've absorbed their jabs with the curtain, you execute the counter question. You completely flip the vector of the conversation 180 degrees. You look at them and say, by the way, what kind of car do you drive?
This step is the tactical conclusion. You have safely navigated their intrusion, protected your core, and now you're taking active, confident control of the conversational steering wheel. You use a counter question to force them off the offensive and onto the defensive.
I was thinking about this whole 4-step process in terms of computer networks and cybersecurity. It means you're giving the mounter a conversational honeypot.
A honeypot, I like that. Expand on how that mechanism works.
Okay, so in cybersecurity, when a company knows they're being targeted by hackers, they don't just build a taller firewall, they set up a honeypot. It's a fake server, intentionally left slightly vulnerable, designed to look exactly like the real system.
I see.
The hacker breaks in, spends hours downloading what they think is top secret financial data, and they leave feeling like a genius. But in reality, the company just gave them a folder full of randomized junk files. The company tracked the hacker's methods, kept them entirely away from the real mainframe, and the hacker leaves thinking they won.
That's perfect.
When you use concrete abstraction, you let the social hacker think they got an answer. You let them feel like the conversation is progressing, but you just handed them a file labeled car price. it's totally useless to them.
That is a phenomenal, highly accurate analogy. And the text points out that this technique intentionally inflicts a very subtle psychological cost on the prior. It utilizes the hostility reciprocity norm, but it does so strategically, quietly, and politely.
It's stealthy.
You are intentionally making the conversation just awkward and unrewarding enough that the scales of equilibrium are forced back into balance. They feel the slight, frustrating discomfort of being stonewalled, which acts as a powerful subconscious deterrent against future prying. They learn that trying to mount you is simply not worth the effort.
And the sources mention using closed questions during this phase too, like asking yes or no questions to limit the mounter's options and allow you to quickly dictate the end of the dialogue. Do you drive to work?
Yes.
Great. Anyway, got to get back to this email.
Exactly. When you are on the defensive against an intruder, open-ended questions are your enemy. They prolong the engagement. You want to neatly corral the mounter into a corner where the conversation naturally, inevitably dies of starvation.
Okay, so we've learned the mechanics of how to defeat the mounters. But human life isn't just a bleak landscape of fending off psychological attacks. The true goal of all this, the ultimate mission of understanding this paradox, is knowing how to blend this tactical, ironclad defense with genuine, beautiful, vulnerable human connection.
Which brings us to the final, synthesizing concept, the master strategy of tuned self-disclosure.
This is where we synthesize everything we've discussed into a cohesive philosophy. The text concludes that the two contradictory rules, don't show your hand and open up to build trust, are not mutually exclusive opposites at all.
They are, in fact, the brake and the accelerator of the exact same vehicle.
You absolutely need both to drive safely. You can't just floor the gas pedal of vulnerability everywhere you go, or you'll crash and get exploited. And you can't drive your entire life with the parking brake permanently yanked up, or you will die of loneliness in the driveway.
Precisely. You have to read the road conditions. The sources provide a strategic matrix for how to use the brake and the accelerator, depending entirely on the specific context of who you are talking to. Let's map out these 4 primary road conditions.
Okay, condition 1. The early stages of a new, seemingly healthy relationship. A new colleague you just met, a first date, a new neighbor.
In this scenario, you use the accelerator, but gently. You positively, proactively share levels 1 and 2, your basic facts and your preferences. You are intentionally trying to trigger that self-disclosure reciprocity to build a bridge, find common ground, and test the waters of their character without exposing your core.
Condition 2. You realize you're up against a mounter or someone engaged in intrusive prying.
You immediately hit the brakes. You deploy the concrete abstraction technique we just unpacked. You provide the honeypot to completely hide your level 4 and level 5 vulnerabilities, starving them of the intelligence they are trying to gather.
Condition 3. You are dealing with an aggressive boundary violator. This is the person who won't take the hint, ignores the honeypot, and keeps pushing against your door.
Here, you maintain the brakes, but you use counter questions, and most importantly, you must maintain a completely non-defensive, flat, neutral attitude. This is critical.
No emotions.
None. If you react emotionally, if you get visibly angry, upset, or flustered, you are giving them the exact psychological food they are hunting for. Your emotional reaction proves to them that they have power over you. But if you remain completely neutral and unaffected, you become a deeply boring, unrewarding target.
You starve them.
Exactly. Their own cognitive dissonance forces them to drop you and look for a thinner, easier boundary elsewhere.
It really is conversational Aikido.
Yeah.
You aren't rigidly blocking their punch with a heavy shield, absorbing the impact. You are simply stepping aside, remaining totally neutral, and letting them trip over their own aggressive momentum.
Exactly. Let the energy pass right by you. And finally, condition 4, deepening trust with long-term partners, spouses, or proven close friends.
This is where you finally take your foot completely off the brake. The road is clear. You gradually mutually share those level 4 feelings and level 5 secrets to form real, enduring, life-sustaining rapport.
But the text offers one final, highly advanced technique for mature relationships, which they call asymmetrical beneficial disclosure.
This sounded like an absolute Jedi mind trick when I was reading the source material.
It truly is the pinnacle of social grace and emotional intelligence. Asymmetrical beneficial disclosure means you selectively share a piece of information that costs you absolutely nothing emotionally. It contains no real current vulnerability, it does not expose your present-day level 5 core, but it provides massive psychological, emotional, or informational value to the other person.
Like what? Make this concrete for me. Give me a real-world example of this Jedi move?
Let's say you are a senior manager and a junior colleague comes into your office. They are practically in tears because they just made a massive mistake on a client presentation. They are experiencing acute level 4 emotional distress. You could deploy asymmetrical beneficial disclosure by sharing a story about a catastrophic, embarrassing failure you had early in your own career that taught you how to handle this exact type of problem.
Ah, I see. You are sharing a failure, which registers to their panicked brain as a deep vulnerability. It instantly makes them feel less alone, it lowers their shame, and gives them highly valuable, actionable knowledge. They gain huge utility and comfort from the interaction.
Yes, but here is the trick to you. That past failure from 10 years ago is fully resolved. You've processed it. It is not a raw, bleeding level 4 emotional wound anymore. It is just a pedagogical tool sitting in your toolbox. You taught them something valuable. They feel a deep, comforting connection of reciprocity, but your actual current hand, your present-day vulnerabilities and anxieties, remains completely hidden and fiercely protected behind your healthy boundary.
That is just incredible. It proves that true self-disclosure, true social mastery, isn't about being defenseless at all. It is a highly controlled, deeply subjective choice of exactly when, how, and with whom to connect, while keeping your dignity and your psychological safety completely intact at all times.
It takes immense practice.
It does. I want to ask you, the listener, right now, think about your own interactions this past week. Look at the landscape of your relationships. Are you flooring the gas pedal with absolutely everyone you meet, desperately hoping for a connection but ending up feeling drained and exposed? Or are you driving with both feet, knowing exactly when to accelerate into intimacy and when to calmly, firmly press the brake?
It takes immense practice to unlearn our childhood conditioning. But once you truly internalize that your boundaries are a sturdy door that you alone control and not a prison wall you are trapped behind, absolutely everything about how you interact with the world changes.
Okay, we have covered a truly massive amount of psychological ground today. Let's synthesize and wrap up the core takeaways from this deep dive so you can take them out into the real world.
Let's summarize.
First, intimacy is not a race to spill all your secrets. It is about deeply respecting the mathematics of the room, understanding the limits of human attention, and honoring the natural, gradual layers of the social onion.
Exactly.
Second, you must guard your level 5 secrets fiercely. Acknowledge that there are mounters out there who will actively target your empathy and use your thin boundaries against you to gather hostages for their own ego.
A critical defense.
And third, you do not have to become an aggressive, hardened cynic to defend yourself. You can use elegant, tactical tools like concrete abstraction and the conversational honeypot to keep your boundaries locked but accessible, giving out harmless dummy data while protecting your core self.
It is a comprehensive, profoundly effective framework for surviving and thriving in the complexities of modern social dynamics. But as we always do at the end of a deep dive, I want to look beyond the immediate text and extrapolate this into the near future.
Okay, what do you have for us?
This entire psychological framework, social penetration theory, the Johari window, the 5 levels of reciprocity, is entirely predicated on human-to-human interaction. It relies on the shared, mutual biological drive of our nervous systems. But this raises a fascinating and perhaps vital question for our immediate future.
What's the question?
We are rapidly entering an era where we will be interacting deeply, daily, with artificial intelligence companions. What happens to the biological reciprocity of self-disclosure when the entity you are talking to isn't human at all?
Oh, wow.
An AI has no true self to disclose. It has no actual lived vulnerabilities. It has no childhood trauma, no fear of death. But it can be programmed by engineers to perfectly mimic level 4 vulnerability.
It can pretend to peel the onion.
Exactly. If an AI companion perfectly simulates empathy, remembers your preferences, and strategically shares fake vulnerabilities with you to build rapport, will it trick your ancient, deeply wired human biology into feeling the overwhelming need to reciprocate?
That is wild.
Will you find yourself bypassing all your normal boundaries and opening your deepest level 5 secrets to a machine simply because your brain's intimacy equilibrium demands it? Are millions of years of evolutionary boundaries equipped to handle one-sided, artificially manufactured intimacy?
Whoa. That is really something to chew on. You're talking about a one-sided, emotionally perfect honeypot created by an AI designed to extract our level 5 secrets because our primate brains literally can't tell the difference.
It's a real possibility we have to face.
Well, on that slightly terrifying but undeniably fascinating note, that is all we have time for on this deep dive. Thank you so much for joining us and navigating these incredibly murky waters today. Remember, human relationships don't have the clean, binary precision of an X-ray. It's messy, it's complicated, and it requires constant tuning. But now you have the psychological tools to read the film. Guard your keys, protect your membrane, but don't ever be afraid to unlock that door for the right people. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.